and welcome to A Junior, a Senior, and I. I'm so pleased today because I have a quite a special episode. Today we're talking about those exotic colleagues of ours, the sales, and how they work, how they organize. To do that, I'm joined by a very esteemed colleague of mine, Solenn. Ooh la la,
Mm.
this is gonna be complicated, and her esteemed ex colleague Martin. I'm sure I'm gonna make this episode flow better than the beginning, but please, Solen, save me and introduce yourself in 3 sentences or less.
All right. Thank you, Pablo. I'm Solenn, and I'm a sales manager in a SaaS startup. We're four on the sales team and 15 altogether at the company. I've been working in sales for 5 years and in tech specifically for 4 years now. And working from Brussels, and very happy to be working closely with you.
Thank you, Solen. And Martin, what about you?
Yeah, hi Pablo. Pablo, happy to be here. I'm Martin. I'm a account executive in brackets, junior account executive, to make it round. Working in Brussels as a junior account executive for a little bit more than 2 years now, and in general in sales for 3.5 years, but 1.5 years before in a startup. Now it's a scale up with about 90 employees. And with two offices around the world, but the headquarters in Brussels.
Okay, where is the other office?
In
Just pure curiosity.
Yeah, sure, in Toronto, Canada, just to serve the American market.
Okay. Before I start with the questions that I actually had prepared, how is it working the distance? Because the schedules are quite different between Brussels and Toronto, right? Are you the Brussels office managing the European market and the Toronto office the US market, or are you doing shifts and sometimes you have to work late? How does it happen?
No, it's exactly as you said. Like the Brussels office is in charge of the European market and the rest of the world, and the Canadian office is for the American market only. So yeah, and to be fair, as we're the headquarter, for us it's probably a little easier because most of our colleagues are based here. So I guess for my colleagues in Toronto, it's from time to time a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. Uh, okay, it actually is a good segue to my first question for you guys. How is work organized in your teams? So then, could you take us away?
Yeah. So in my company, the sales team is in charge of prospecting and closing deals. We have a team of CS, customer support, to take care of the onboarding and the support. So we basically have to organize our work between prospecting via calls, emails, sequences. We have tools for that to help us find the right people to contact and be efficient on a daily basis. And we're in charge of our meetings, and our meetings go from discovery qualification calls to demos and quote negotiations. Our sales cycle is pretty short. It goes pretty smoothly because we get to talk to SMEs and very quickly directly to the buyer. So we can pretty much sell from 1 or 2 days to just a few weeks, basically.
That's a dream.
Okay. Uh, from your reaction, Martin, I guess that it's not a typical situation. How is it organized in your workplace?
Yeah, I mean, I was referring to the sales cycle, obviously, because the sales cycle for us is like, I think on average, half a year. I think it was reduced a little bit to 5 months now, but it's still a lot. And especially as I'm especially in charge of the German speaking areas, the DACH region, it's sometimes even longer. So that's just not, it's pretty normal that from time to time it's taking longer. But coming back to your question, in terms of organization, it's pretty similar from what Solenn told us already. So as well in the sales team, as an account executive, we are responsible for the whole cycle. We do not have SDRs. In the past, we had SDRs. I was as well an SDR when I joined the company for, don't let me lie, I think 9 to 10 months until I got promoted. And yeah, back then we had at least 4 to 5 SDRs around, like also on the European market and on the North American market. So yeah, but beside that, our marketing team is getting us from time to time more and more leads, and that's ramping up. Maybe that's like the biggest difference from yeah, between our companies right now. That this area is growing, but obviously everything afterwards with the customer success team is pretty much the same.
Okay, gotcha. Could you please just explain what an SDR is? In tech, we are quite ignorant of of the technical speak of sales.
Okay, sure. No, so like the SDR, like the sales development representative, in some cases also business development representative, are basically the people who are in charge of the outbound activities, like the cold outreach activities, until setting up the first meeting. So they're like really doing the really, really hard work all the day, like in and out, calling, emailing, different channels, obviously, reaching out to possible prospects or to prospects to try to convince them to jump on a call. In some companies, it's that organized that the SDRs are doing the first call with the customer, just basically to qualify them in terms of okay, what are your needs, pains, etc., to give it then over to an account executive. But in some companies, it's also the case that the SDRs are just setting up the meeting and the account executive is taking it from there. So yeah, it's basically a tough job.
Gotcha. Um, I have a question that since you're mentioning you mentioned before the sales cycle being longer or shorter, does that change the way you sell? Like if I draw a dubious analogy, is does one allow you to work a bit as if you were harvesting a field, an industrial field, where you go for quantity and things will just come as they like you will harvest the leads as they come, or and the other is more like you go to the forest to pick out flowers and you really are careful to which one you're gonna pick, and uh, does that is that affected by the sales cycle?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's more the first option to be fair, because the sales cycle is that long. You really have to make sure that all the time possible leads or possible deals, yeah, are still coming in the time you're not closing the other ones. So you always need backups because you can't rely on the ones, but that's general in sales, on the deals you have. But compared to Solenn's example and situation, as she's speaking most of the time directly to the economic buyer, how we say it in sales, so the one who's deciding um, if the deal is getting signed or not. We're most of the times are not speaking directly to the economic buyer, because yes, we're selling also to SMEs, but also more in the philanthropy yeah, space to foundations. Their economic buyers are, for example, the board of directors, etc., and they normally do not care or do not interact with the salespeople. And on the other side, sometimes we're also speaking to enterprise companies, which obviously then you do not speak that often to any kind of economic buyer if there's not like even just a whole department deciding about the deals, for example, procurement.
Okay. And Solen, what do you think about that?
I think for the initial phases of the sales process, so really the prospection and just booking this first call, I don't see such a big difference, to be honest. It's really finding the right, for me, it's really finding the right balance between quantity and quality, meaning that with quality, you want to be spending your time calling and emailing and adjusting what you're saying to people that you actually want to talk to, that actually matter. However, people are busy and business wise, you need to have this quantity in, just because a lot of people won't reply to you. And when they do reply, you will get a lot of negative replies. So you only get a few positive ones. Now, for me, the biggest difference when you have a longer life sales cycle is the amount of effort that you have to put in after the first meeting. So really be super well organized with the next steps that you have, because usually it means that you have multiple people to talk to and multiple validation steps that you have to go through. So you really have to keep your contacts motivated on your side, really your champion. And that requires, yeah, good organization and motivation to move this project forward. Whereas when you have a very short sales cycle, you can basically, well, in my case, sell and have a signature after a second call, let's say, even sometimes during the first call, which is a bit more rare. But yeah, it goes more like this. But the initial part for me is the same. It's what comes after the first meeting that differs between the kind of product that you sell and the people that you have to talk to.
I often feel, to be fair, like a little bit as a project manager. As Solenn said, I have so many different departments who are interacting. So I'm in charge of speaking with the IT department, with GDPR officers, with procurement departments, also with IT, whatever. Like they're like different departments I'm taking care of. I'm the first person to talk to, also from the prospect side. So basically, if I have questions internally to legal, IT, for example, as well, that's something which is always going through my desk and through me. So therefore, it's really like, yeah, you have to keep an eye on everything, and that's why the relationship, especially to your prospect, is super important.
Okay, thanks. It's really interesting, and it leads me to my next topic I wanted to talk about, because I see some characteristics emerging from what you say. So I guess a good salesperson needs to be resilient, organized, uh, probably a good people person. But for you, which would be the good qualities of a salesperson? Let's start with Martin.
That's a tough one. Definitely, your ability to suffer, to make it that hard, because especially in the beginning, you get a lot of rejection, and the really important part is that you do not take anything personal, because it's like always on the business level. So all the things you mentioned are definitely correct, like being organized, etc., being a people person for sure. But like, yeah, the dedication and the ability to suffer, I would say, are like really important ones. And like people who are joining sales for the first time and then do not have success, and yeah, lots of the case it's because, in my opinion, and my feeling, often they're really not used to what's coming there.
And for you, Solen, what would be the characteristics of a good salesperson?
Yeah, I completely agree with Martin. The few qualities that I listed are someone who's curious and a very good listener. One has this idea that people who like talking, who takes space in the room, would be good at sales, but that's not specifically the case, because to be good in sales, you have to be a good listener, to be able to let your prospect talk, to make them talk and understand what they're saying, truly read between the lines, whether it is to provide the right solution, or to take them to another path. If this is not, like, if they tell you, I think I need that, but they, like, based on experience, something else would be helpful for them. So you have to understand that and be able to help them in the best way. And for me, yeah, a good salesperson needs to be there for the right reasons. And I think it's really to be genuinely interested in helping people. So someone who's selfless and wants to bring solutions to help people, that's when the projects that you work on and the people that you create a relationship, that makes the most sense.
Mm. I smiled when you said the archetypical image of a salesperson is someone that basically fills the room, right? Because that's how I see you in my little introverted space. I
Yeah.
see a salesperson, it's like, oh wow, the room is full now. What are we gonna do? But I see what you mean. That yeah, at the end of the day, to convince someone, you must understand them, right? And your job is convincing someone to buy.
Yeah, you cannot understand someone if they don't have room to speak. And yeah, and that's actually something that we have to work on a lot. Sometimes in coaching people is to teach them how to stop talking and how to pause, to give room for questions and to see if there's any doubt and anything that may be blocking that you wouldn't know if you were just filling the room with your words.
And maybe one thing to add, because you said making them, like, to convince them. Ideally, it's to make them realize that they want to use your solution. It's not convincing them. It's like make them realize and make it. Ideally, the ideal solution is, okay, fuck, I need your solution. That's what I need, and that's to make them realize, okay, wow, okay, that's a problem I maybe was not aware of before, or something which I quantified completely different, and then make them aware to say, okay, wow, I have here, or you have what I need, I will take it. That's the ideal solution, obviously. Sometimes, to be fair, obviously you have to convince them.
I see that, and it's good that you explained further, because the first reaction that popped into my head when you said make them realize they need your product or solution was, yeah, right, convince them. It's just the same way of saying it, right? But once you explained it, it was clear. But it does bring me to that, and I would also like to tie in with a comment that Solen made. Solen talked about right reasons. You are talking about making them realize that they need your solution. Does is being convinced of what you're selling fundamental, or you can fake that conviction?
I mean, I would say for me personally, it is important. I mean, I would say you could fake it at some point, depending on the product, but it would mean I do not like my job and I do not like what I'm selling, and I have to feel comfortable in the environment I'm working in. And therefore, for me, it's important that I believe in the product I'm selling. I mean, I always worked so far only in tech sales, and like everything around digitalization, cloud solutions, SaaS products. That's what I'm interested in and where I see a lot of value and potential. Therefore, plus obviously the industry we're active in is where I think, okay, that's something where I see myself in and where I believe in. That's why I think it's easier for me to sell it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, yes, it's possible to fake it, but then it will not be as enjoyable as if you truly believed in the value that you're bringing and um, that you're actually helping people. Because we work a lot in sales, and there are a lot of ups and downs. It's morally and physically exhausting, and so if you're not happy with what you're doing, it becomes very, very difficult.
My approach to how we work in tech is that I believe that team is super important in tech, and so it feels like for me developing a feature should feel like a communal effort. But from what I'm hearing, the impression I'm getting is that sales might be a solitary job filled with people around you. Is that close to truth?
So, I think yes. I think that's a good way to put it, because in sales, you are in charge of your pipe. You are responsible for making your own calls, creating deals, closing them. So it's on you, which is both good and bad, because well, if you're with good people around you, then they're grateful and you're rewarded. But when you don't sign and it goes to shit, then it's also on you, which can also be a good thing because you know what you can improve and you can really work on yourself and your sales skills. And that's why it feels a bit lonely sometimes. However, yeah, it's true that well, we are indeed surrounded by lots of people, and that helps. But the way you put it is actually perfect because we're not alone, but we may be a bit lonely sometimes. Yeah, but relying on one's colleagues, whether they're in our team or in other teams around us, I think that's key to to our success, but to the success of the company and just also socially as well. Yeah, it wouldn't happen without this part either.
Yeah, to be fair, I agree with everything Solenn said, and I would also add, like, I think it also depends a little bit on the size of the company. I mean, especially for you, Solenn, working in a startup, I think it feels more familiar, and also for me in a scale up, it's still like on a level where I would say, okay, you can really feel the team energy. Although, as Solenn said, in the end, you're responsible for your target, you're responsible for your numbers, and sales is in many cases, unfortunately, maybe yeah, a numbers game, to put it like this. So yeah, but for me, it's all, yeah. As I said it before, like working in an environment where I feel comfortable is super important, and therefore I have the feeling like team effort is definitely something where I feel that there is a team effort also, like towards supporting sales and us in sales, like from the product department, from marketing, from CS, from everyone.
Yeah, yeah. No, if I may add as well, even within the sales team, I feel like well, obviously it depends on who you have on your team, but there's this idea that salespeople are very shocky and want to step on each other's foot. But wherever I've worked, it was not the case, and I was actually surrounded with people who wanted to help each other and were there if you had any questions, and you could share ideas or use cases, and that was also very empowering.
I'm interested in. I think you may have different perspectives to my next topic. Is that you both mentioned that the team is also quite important, and having that support around you, both from uh, within the company and within the team. Um, and I'm guessing you're gonna have different perspectives in this due to your positions. How actively do you go out of your way, or do people in your team go out of their way to support you on your downs, or to bring you higher on your ups? If it might be an uncomfortable question, because you're still in your teams, obviously, and I don't want to put you in trouble, so feel free to decline to answer if you want to.
Solenn, you want to go first?
No, please do.
Um, I mean, just to make sure I got it correctly. So basically, you're asking in which scenarios other teams do not help us and help us, or
No, on the contrary, I was. When are you trying to get out of your way to help a teammate that is struggling, or how often do
mm,
you do that, and how often does a teammate also try to pick you up when you lost a sale, or etc.?
okay, then I got it. So basically, that's in my case pretty positive because yeah, in my environment currently, it's always like helping and supporting each other. So, for example, we have like buddy system for newcomers. So basically, I'm responsible for a newcomer, like not only on a personal level to yeah, make sure she or him are like getting or like welcomed by everyone, like helping with maybe also sometimes moving. Getting along in Brussels, like from a really like outside work perspective, but also inside work. Obviously, when something is not working, that we speak about it, because I think like especially on the ground floor, let's say it like this, is really important to have a good team atmosphere that you can speak about different things. And like today when I lost a deal against a competitor, it was also like that. My colleagues pushed me and like asked questions, obviously, but like also backed me up. So, and that's luckily the case for me.
Um, so for me, as a manager, obviously, I have this role where my job is to help my team and to help them improve their skills, but also just stay motivated and keep doing what they have to do, basically. So I try to do it in different ways, whether it's by being as reactive as I can whenever they have questions, shadowing their calls, and just being there in case there are any super technical questions that the newcomers may not have the answers to yet, or just not saying anything during the call, but debriefing together and sharing feedback. Um, on the side note, I try to help them also fill in their lists. So talking a bit strategy, what would be the best accounts to target, that kind of things. And for me specifically, uh, I'm very open to communication. So I know that for myself, when it comes to my own targets or my own daily life, I have no issue sharing or just asking questions. And whenever I feel down, for example, I would reach out I would go in my in the tech office and have a coffee, and they would lighten up the mood, and yeah, I would feel better. But yeah, sometimes there are some difficult projects with integrations and like more tech stuff that I don't know the full details of, and that's when I reach out for help to whoever can help me, basically.
I mean, that's basically like the feedback culture you should have. Huh? That's what I
Exactly.
was referring to as well. That everyone should be open for feedback, and when you need help, that you know where to ask.
Yeah,
Hmm.
And that's yeah, that's how it should be, and that's I think in both of our cases, it's yeah the situation we're in. So that's yeah super important to yeah to be a good salesperson.
absolutely.
I see, and just I may interject and pick up the thread that Solen dropped. The Solen coffees are quite infamous in the tech team. We know that around 4:35, she will come in with a big smile and will want a coffee, and will stay there for 20 minutes and light up the room.
If another deal closed,
But is there really 20 minutes? Because I don't have a watch. I don't.
I,
Oh yeah,
I had to say
probably.
a number,
Yeah,
but
sure.
it's probably around that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and it does bring me to and again, your perspectives will probably be quite different because of your positions and the sizes of your teams. How is your relationship with the tech team in particular?
in my case, it's at least important to say that I have more relation to the product team than to the actual IT team. So for the IT team, I'm more, yeah, I have relations to, or like, yeah, like on a work basis when it's around, yeah, real IT security questions. But when it's about product questions in terms of okay, what can we do in terms of product roadmap, in terms of product limitations, obviously. And that's more often the case than I'm speaking about IT security reasons, for example. That's why like my relation to the product team is more intense than to the actual IT team.
I gotcha. And how, before we let Solen answer as well, how much input do you have on the product roadmap, and how much open are they to hearing from you and the sales department in general?
I would say they are pretty open always for feedback because basically for them it's super important to get answers and to get our knowledge directly from the market because we should know what the market wants. Obviously, the product team is doing their research as well, but as we're in contact with the prospects, with future customers, um, they always rely on our feedback in terms of how yeah, strength my position is or my voice. I would say it's obviously limited. I have a good relation to people in the product team. That's why from time to time they were also like setting up meetings with us as a sales team or like with one of the regional sales team where I was included, just to get feedback on um, future products and future trends, and to also see where we have gaps. But obviously, it's more powerful when it comes from the sales manager. But when we tell ourselves, when we speak with our sales manager and say, "Hey, here's the big problem," then normally he's really raising that towards management and product as well.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks. And you, Soren, how is your relationship with us, the tech team?
I think we are in touch almost every day. If not every day, every second day, for technical questions first. Again, we're talking about the feedback culture, but also like questions we ask them on open channels on Slack so that everyone can also see the answer and learn from them. Questions that we get from customers or prospects, obviously, or that just we ourselves wonder when we dig into more complicated situations. Um, we are also a lot in contact when it comes to API and connectors integration questions, because of the way our system works. It has to be connected to other tools, and so yeah, something that we work a lot on is to make sure that we can connect to those other tools. So I'm very much in contact with the IT team to unlock some deals sometimes to see what we can do to make this happen. Obviously, we take into account the amount that is in place and the how much we could get from it, like how many other prospects are using the system and how much business can we make from it. And that leads me to a third point, which is more about the roadmap in terms of features as well, like looking into the evolution of the system. What would be the priorities? What are the pain points? And then having you guys help us think of the best solutions that would apply to everyone, both customers and future prospects.
I smile because everyone thinks they are the I don't know how to say nombril in English, but the center of the world. And the same way you think of us helping you define what we could work on to help our customers, I think so in reverse. I see you as helping us shape shape the future of the project of the product. Okay, that's cool. I have a question that does stem from this last topic. Is that how much visibility you have on the future of what is happening with your respective products, and is something that you think you should have more or less of?
I mean, in our case, it's pretty clear because we have an internal roadmap which is accessible for everyone, where our focus. So basically, we can see what's on the roadmap. Obviously, in terms of strategy, something can still change from time to time. We have every quarter a product talk where basically product is presenting what was done in the in the quarter, and then obviously also is informing about future steps and updates on future product, which I think is really valuable. So that's in well, I would say it's for us pretty transparent, although I'm not always aligned with it, obviously, because I was just smiling when you spoke about interfaces and connection to other systems, because that's something I'm speaking and raising for 1.5 years now. and where I think we definitely need improvement. But that's also obviously like product is not deciding it on their own. It's also still a management decision. And as we're a scale up, yeah, it's not only one person leading the product team and is saying what is getting done. There are like more people involved, so it's a process.
Cool. Um, you mentioned an internal roadmap without sharing any sensitive details, obviously. How detailed is it time wise, and how often does the tech team manage to adhere to it? Because for me, one of the biggest challenges of tech is estimation and actually planning for more than, let's say, a couple of weeks, a month, because situations change and an estimate is basically a guess, and you never have enough information to guess correctly.
Mhm. I mean, that differs, I would say, because currently, or like just recently, they launched their plan for the next 4 years. So, like a pretty long term plan where they really say, okay, in 4 years, we want, yeah, to be at this point, but obviously, it's still a little bit vague in between. So, it's not really like super. Yeah, defined yet. They just have basically an overall goal where they want to be, and now step by step they will add the steps, milestones to reach that point. Which obviously, as we're still in the scale up phase, also depends on investments and revenue. So it's not always easy for them as well to plan that like on a monthly or half year basis.
Okay, thanks. And Solen, how do you feel the visibility of future features, of future developments, or even of what is already developed is at your company, at our company?
I feel like we try to share information that would make sense to other departments in the best way we can. So we have those weekly what happened in XX department. Just summary, bullet points. This is what we worked on, what we achieved, and what we're still working on, basically. So that helps a lot. We also uh, are aware when there is something new that is deployed on the app. To me, it always comes as a surprise. So I don't know if it's because I don't read until the end some of the messages, but I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then I congratulate everyone who worked on it. Um, so I would say that on this question I have mixed feelings because I am aware of what you're currently working on, and sometimes things are deployed when I had no idea that you guys were working on it. Those were smaller things, so not critical to the function of a feature, for example, or whatever. Obviously, for those topics, we talk about it, and yeah, this obviously you ask also us what would make more sense, and also get feedback from CS and that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I know we talked already about visibility and roadmap and being able to have a date in mind for deployment of a new feature or a new connector. And I understand you made me understand how tricky it was, and so now I'm fine with being very reasonable with what we communicate with our prospects. At the end of the day, it's just important that everyone can deliver what they say they would. So better be, I don't want to say blurry or hesitant, but I just want to be say, okay, let's say safe with what we share. Sometimes, yeah, I for me as a manager, it's important. I want to know sort of what can come, but yeah, for the very small things, it's okay not to be fully aware of all the details. We don't have to. Everyone has their job, and we trust you at the end of the day.
I have a follow-up question for you, but first for the intrahistory. one of the things that I insist a lot is that we don't give precise dates, because basically when I tell someone this is gonna take, I don't know, 2 weeks, it's a rough guess. And first, I don't know, we don't know if we will have time to work on that as much as we would like. And secondly, we don't know what obstacles we will find in the way. So Solen points out that I um, insisted a lot on not giving her dates, and more on we are working on this subject, which is what I try to communicate. But my follow-up question, Solen, is because the way the features are communicated seems to be quite different between Martin's company and us. How much does it hinder you, that fog of war, that in part is because we are a smaller company, and in part is semi deliberate on my end? How much does it hinder you on your day to day, or on closing deals, or on opening new opportunities?
Not much. And so that's why it's not a huge problem, because maybe it's because of the product that we have right now that works very well and that we are able to sell without too many product issues, if any, or like very rare product issues. So that's not an issue. The only thing is, if I have like a raising problem, then I come to you and we talk about a solution, and then we may do with the timing.
Hmm. Gotcha. And before this devolves into an internal feedback session on Recover,
Of course.
let's get to the spicy stuff. Let's get our colleagues Matt with us. What's the most frustrating thing that you experience in working with tech departments, or product and IT departments in general?
That's a really spicy and difficult question as well, to be fair, because as Solen said, I wouldn't say like it's a big blocker for me in many cases. It's just some limitations I have from time to time. So in terms of where I see, okay, I can't sell to this customer although they are in our ICP because we have product limitations. That's where I would say it's a little bit frustrating, because you see also like the prospect values what the product we have, but then he said, okay, that's a hard requirement for us. We need that. And you definitely see, okay, that's something we will or we have to um, deliver in the future, or we will deliver in the future, but at the moment it's just a limitation. There where I would say it's like frustrating from time to time, because that's just sad. Um, because obviously in sales you want to close the deal, you want to have the logo, etc. You worked on the deal maybe from time to time even a little bit longer until you saw that this is the deal breaker. Ideally, obviously, this comes up like really early stage, because then it's okay. But I think that's the most frustrating part. Beside that, again, it's more like a cooperation. It's like working together on the success of the company. So you give feedback, they give feedback, and you work on the product together. That's my diplomatic answer.
Uh, I'm gonna I'm gonna lie to you and promise I will cut it and ask you for your non-diplomatic answer. I'm joking. And Solen, you can be as diplomatic or undiplomatic as you'd like with your answer.
I think so. I agree with what Martin says. When this happens, yeah, that's annoying. But something else that I've noticed is about communication, because it turns out we don't always use, and often not only we don't always use the same wording. So we talk about prospects and customers, and you talk about users and tenants. Just to give a very, very easy example, then each company and each product have their own wording and vocabulary, obviously. But what I find frustrating sometimes is when I have technical questions that I try to, well, that obviously I ask from a sales perspective with my sales understanding and wording, and limitations in understanding and wording as well. And when I get very techie answer that I don't understand, and then I have to pick my brain to try to understand, or no, which is what I do, I just either ask someone else, or like to include someone else in the conversation, asking them, can you provide like a feedback or can you explain? Or I just try to like I just have to ask a second time. But there are only a few ways that I can ask my question.
I understand that there is a concept, and I'm gonna try to not be too rambly, but there is a concept within tech, within a subset of ways of working that is called domain driven design, that is called the ubiquitous. Not only am I getting rambly, I cannot even say the word properly. Ubiquitous language. And the idea is that when you speak with domain experts, which you are in this context because you know the industry, you know the players, you know what they need, etc., etc., you should have the same language, because of course things get lost in translation, right? Like a user for us could be a subscriber for you, or a customer for you could be a client for us. And every time you have to mentally translate something in your head, some knowledge and intention gets lost in what is being said. So I see how that is a problem. It's true that since we are, as a tech department, I think that's mostly universal, more used to dealing in both languages, we can more easily understand someone speaking the different language than what we use in our code, right? But I can see that it can be really frustrating to, okay, why are you talking to me about subscribers and talking about users? Please talk to my in my language, right?
Yeah. Or sometimes the answer is very tech oriented, so feature oriented or code oriented, where our initial question was about a use case. And then we have to understand what the tech description will mean when we use it. Like if I talk about a feature, like what implications will it have for the user?
Yeah, that's super important, especially like I often had it also like with the legal, and that's the same with product. Then you get an answer to your question, but you have to argument this answer towards the prospect. So it's not like we can't do that. It's like why we can't do that. It's like that the important part, because this information why we can't do that, because maybe of the logic of the system, it's if we do not oversee that directly, because we might have also like some limited knowledge in some areas of the product, as you're the expert obviously, this is super important that we know why we can't do something or why we can't agree on certain terms, like to make it maybe a little bit more visible. That's super important for us. It's just when we just tell the prospect, no, we can't do that, he was like, yeah, okay. Then the conversation stopped there, and we have to ask, well, we have to suggest workarounds or whatsoever.
Small question about that. How often to the why can't we do that do you get the answer, quote, because we can't, end quote?
I would say normally I get it, but I always have to ask for, and maybe not only once, maybe sometimes even twice, because like it's just like how the departments work. For them, it's just okay. We can't do that. There may be a little bit more, yeah. That's just how you work. That something is not working, then it's not possible because you have the idea in your head exactly. I mean, it's the same when we're presenting the system. We sometimes have to start really from zero because we have to remind ourselves that the prospects never saw the system before. So far, some logics in the system are clear, but we have obviously to present the logic and have to make sure that they understand the logic. And I would say that's the same here. You answer, and sometimes you do not have in mind that we do not oversee everything, and therefore we just asked. And in my case, at least, it's normally the case that I'm getting the answer.
we're gonna get close to the end of the podcast, and part of my goal with this episode is to allow tech people to better understand salespeople. And um, I'm gonna first draw a caricature of what I, as a salesperson, as a tech person, think a salesperson does throughout his day or her day, and then I'm gonna ask you to do the same for a tech person, right? Because I think seeing how people see us helps us realize better their perspective. So for me, a salesperson basically spends half of their day calling people, 20% of their day getting coffee, and then the rest is doing admin stuff. Like, okay, I need to clean my pipe, I need to finalize this offer, etc., etc. Um, I don't know how close I am to that. I don't know if you want to react to that. But what I will ask you is that you share how you see a dev or a tech person's job being.
I'm not drinking coffee, maybe to add that one. I'm not sure if that's rating than the 20% point, but Solenn, you can start.
Okay, no, that's a funny picture. Um, I think 20% for getting coffee is a lot. Maybe let's say 5%. Sure. Uh, but I think it's just to take the steam off of meeting people and having to, be in a certain frame. And when you are in front of, like in a meeting, you really have to be under control and so hyper focused over what the person is telling you and how you interact with them. Uh, Me personally, I just need a few minutes to 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 be efficient after a meeting. But yeah, so from like the sales, a salesperson does spend a lot of time calling, emailing, in meetings. The admin part takes also a lot of time. But I think there's also a part of thinking and prepping for the meetings, and when you look back at your notes, you have to think, okay, what questions do I need to ask more next time? And this part, I think maybe tech people are not aware of. So there's a lot of thinking that goes into also, yeah, finding the right people, but also reflecting on what happened and how you want to approach the person or the meeting to make it happen and, make it happen smoothly. Um, yeah, what I think tech people spend their day on coding, most of the thing, of course. Um, Debugging, so having to be reactive when there's a bug somewhere from CS or from whoever. And yeah, maybe also being there for their colleagues to help them figure out something in their code whenever they have a question.
Okay, uh, thanks. Just to clarify, the 20% of time getting coffee was not a dig at sales at all. Uh, I I do understand that the intensity of the job a salesperson does has to have an escape valve, and that's
Yeah,
what I was referring with the 20% coffee. It wasn't
absolutely.
a dig at,
Sure.
oh, salespeople do not work. Like,
Yeah, sure.
salespeople do not work, but that's not what I was trying to say.
No, that's all fine. Maybe I will reflect on what my day is looking like after. Maybe first, like towards your question, what I'm thinking the IT department is doing. Also, here the disclaimer: in our case, IT department, product team plus an extra support team. So, like support team in charge of bugs. Um, s- but when I'm speaking about the IT and the product team, like in my opinion, like in how I see the teams, is they're like working pretty much project focused. So like depending on what you're doing, what kind of features you're responsible for, what kind of developments you're responsible for. You're working, yeah, project focus, maybe even if in a team where you have to organize yourself. So, for example, in our product team, we have one person just in charge of UI UX, meaning I know this person is always focusing on these activities, obviously checking feedback. I know that our product team is also doing research and market screening in terms of what's going on there, because obviously market trends, they have to be aware of, and that's definitely part of your job as well as it's for us. Um, I mean, I'm not sure if I could. I mean, then you have internal meetings, etc., etc. Ideally, I would say the internal meetings are not too much, or at least they're focused and have an added value in the end. And it's not like, okay, you're spending time without an helpful outcome. But that's how I see the IT work. I'm not sure if that's accurate or.
Uh, I think there is a lot of variation within IT teams. There are IT teams that do what they call ensemble programming, and so we'll spend basically the whole day with several people in front of the same computer. So the whole day is quote unquote a meeting, although the dynamic is not the dynamic of a meeting. Um, and then there are the other extreme is IT teams that are super specialized, where one person is, and I'm caricaturizing here, responsible of buttons, and so they will spend their days just making sure the buttons are correct and doing very little research, right? And then you have every variation in between, where you can have tech teams that are more product focused and have some time to meet with the customers. You have teams that are just fed tickets and do them. I'm guessing the variation is as high within tech teams that within sales teams.
Yeah, maybe a little less, I would even say. Maybe Solenn, you want to go first?
No, I wanted to ask you a question actually. Does it differ depending on the size of the team, or what is it based on?
In my opinion, there is a size component, in the sense that when you are, I don't know, Facebook or Slack or whatever, the size that you have and the inertia that that size brings forces you to do things a certain way. And then there is the way in which the tech team or is either forced to or chooses to work. And then it's about trying to find best practices. It's difficult to have research to back up how you work, because it should evolve faster than it can be researched. But I think it's part the team chooses to work a certain way and things evolve naturally, or is imposed top down a way of working. And then, yes, size plays into it, but there are very big companies that are quite agile in the way they work, and vice versa, very small companies that are very top down and very um, ticket closers, basically.
Yeah, and maybe to come back to your question from the beginning, how we work, Solenn already mentioned it a bit. I would say, ideally, for me, a day is like one third prospection, one third admin work, or maybe a little less, and then the rest deal management. Like including deal management is like meeting with customers, etc. But beside that, you still have to do like your general organization, and from time to time, you have more meetings at one day, and then on the other one, and then you can focus a little bit more on prospection. So everything in terms of cold outreach, etc. And the other day more meeting oriented, and obviously, as Solenn said, preparation is really important, especially prospect meetings. You have to prepare before, after. You have to create quotes. You have to find strategies. You have then, obviously, when we're speaking about RFPs, that are the most fun times for salespersons, and it's because that's extra work. I mean, we didn't cover that. Maybe that's a little bit too much for now. But RFPs are. I'm not a big fan, although we have tools like LoopQ to help us. But it's like a lot of extra work we're doing, unfortunately. Um,
I'm gonna take a stab in the dark here and say that RFPs are requests for proposal. How?
exactly. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, nice. I
It,
know my my sales lingo.
yeah, there's just one thing that I wanted to add, indeed, because I just explained the like the basic tasks of a sales when it comes to numbers, but there are some things that we don't necessarily think about which can be event preparation, events organization, partnerships management, and management in general as well, shadowing and onboarding. That takes a lot of time. Which, yeah, so in my case specifically, like half my time, if sometimes not more, is for those tasks as well, which are not direct sales tasks related.
Sure, and I'm guessing you spend so much time because they have higher leverage than
Yeah,
just a direct sales, right?
exactly. And we're talking also long-term added value, not only for one person, but for the whole company.
Okay. As a rough estimate, because I assume the time varies on the size of the deal and all that, how much time on average do you think you spend preparing for I don't know, for a qualifying or pre-qualifying meeting and for a closing meeting?
Okay, I go first. For qualification, depending on inbound and outbound. So if it's outbound, when I reached out to them, it's more preparation because I'm noting down more, like checking what could be valuable, where I, yeah, possible, questions to ask. For inbound, it's more, okay, I know there's an interest on their side. So obviously, I'm checking who they are, what they're doing, but I would say it's a little less preparation in my case because I have some rough questions in mind. I'm always asking to start the conversation and to let it flow. Then for closing meetings, I mean that really depends. What are closing meetings? What kind of meetings are we speaking about? So is it just like the last meeting before signing? I mean, normally maybe that's from the outside. There's always a meeting, a closing meeting. I would say it's always a process, and at one point they say, "Okay, we do it," and then you plan the signature process. So, and the signature process is, yeah, then the actual signing process, and before, yeah, you maybe try to convince the economic buyer if you have access to them.
Got you. I think that in my mind, what I have in mind when I say closing meeting is that meeting where you think, okay, this is it, this is where I'm making the sale. Not the one where the go ahead is given and the site signature, but the one where you say, okay, now I got them. I'm gonna go. This is the meeting I'm gonna get them.
I think that's different from Solenn, my position again, because for me, it's I convinced my champion, which is basically the prospect I reached out to, and I know he or she wants to have the system. But then it's okay, who I have to convince now. And then it's literally at least three more stakeholders I have to convince, including the one who's making the decision. And sometimes I'm not even speaking to the one making the decision. Therefore, I have to equip my champion. It's getting too much into detail now at the end, but then I have to equip my champion to make the sell for me internally, ideally. That's a little bit hard for me to answer.
Okay, gotcha. But thanks because the detail was really interesting.
Yeah. So basically, all those steps that Martin has after convincing his champion, I don't have. So for me, a sales is, I would say, between 3 and 4 hours in total. And for that, I'm taking like a rough, very, very rough estimation. 1 hour prospection, 1 hour qualification with prep and follow up, could be 2 hours maybe. 1 hour 30 demo with follow up and prep. But if the admin work has been done properly as well, uh, 30 minutes quote negotiation or quote review, and then let's say 1 hour to close. So if they don't sign right away, let's say 1 hour for a follow-up meeting maybe, and like admin prep. So okay, let's say 5 hours in total, roughly estimated for a deal that is average. Everything's doing fine, and I'm talking to the right person, like from the beginning.
I'm seeing Martin shaking his head in disbelief.
I knew it, but it's still hard to hear because, like, just imagine one example. Next week, I'm about to close a deal where I worked on more than a year. So I'm working more than a year with this champion, with the different stakeholders to finally close it. So yeah, obviously, I didn't even count how many hours I
Yeah,
spent on this
sure.
deal.
Right, right. Uncountable. Well, then I'd like to close the podcast by congratulating you on this nearly signed deal.
Not
Uh,
signed yet.
It's not signed yet.
I
Don't
said
jinx it.
here. Oh crap! You have that in sales as
That's the
well.
thing.
Well, then, then I would wish to rescind my congratulations and thank you both so much for having joined me today. It was really nice.